Welcome. My name is Mark Lewis. It's great to have you here. I'm with Platinum. I've got a great guest today. Is Dr. Noel Lloyd with 5 Star Management. I tell you what, if you are looking to hire an associate or you have an associate and want to know how to make them better in the office, this is the man for you. This is the guru behind associates. Dr. Lloyd, welcome.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you.
Thanks
So,
for being here. Yeah, I know
well,
you
my
got a great
pleasure.
presentation for it. You got a great presentation for us today. What I'd like you to do, if you want to, just teach away, get right into it.
Well, I want to mention just as we get into this, I've had hundreds and hundreds of clients, thousands of clients, literally over 3 decades plus of coaching, and I always ask somebody, "What software are you using?" And usually, it's a love-hate relationship, and uh, so I ran into a group of people, and I said, "What?" I said, "So what do you use?" And they said, "Well, I use Platinum." And I said, "Well, that's cool." And then I got prepared. I said, "So how do you like it?" And they said, "We love it." So I think that I had 6 or 8 people straight that said the same thing. And I said, "So who sells this Platinum stuff?" And they said, "Well, Mark Lewis, you ought to meet him." And that's how you and I got initially introduced. Is that I sought you out, right?
You did. You sought me out. I thank you for that.
I did. I did. Okay, so let me. I want to. Let's see. I want to go into my screen share stuff, and sometimes I have a little bit of a challenge with that. Let's see if I can do that here. I'm going to go into desktop number 2, and I'll do that. And let's see, Mark. And
Perfect. Looks great
we'll
there. Looks great.
oh, okay. So let me ask you this: you see the how to hire associates in the one slide and all that.
I do. I do. It looks perfect.
Okay. Well, one of the things that Mark said, and I can't really disagree with him. He said that if you want to hire associates, you should talk to Noel Lloyd. Um, so this particular webinar is about how to hire great associates and be profitable in 90 days. Now I'm going to steal a little bit from the presentation going further. Most associateships fail. Most fail as a result of the business of the associateship failing. And having profitable associates that make more money than they actually cost the clinic, associates that produce their own new patients, is not only the way to do it, but also real rare. And this is what this whole seminar is all about. So that's me out in front of 5 Star Management. Um, I've been coaching people for gobs of years. I've been a chiropractic coach for almost 35 years, coaching my own associates in my clinics as well. And this is the problem I run into for the busy, successful chiropractor. Now, this is the busy chiropractor. This is the doctor who's got um, almost more practice than he or she can handle. They need help. And what I mean they need help is that they are at maximum capacity. One guy told me one time, he says, "I am dancing as fast as I possibly can." Another guy told me that he had been playing injured for 7 years. He had had a combination of a rib and a shoulder thing. And he said, "I might need a surgical repair in my shoulder." He says, "But I can't take any time out to do anything. I've just had to learn to live around this particular injury, and I'm in pain every day." And he needed help. And then also doctors desire freedom. I just talked to a doctor this morning who's going to be a client. And he's 55 years old, and he gets less than a week off together all year. In other words, he takes the 3-day, the 4-day. If the 4th of July lands on the right day, he might get a few more days. And if Christmas and New Year's land correctly, but he gets no time to enjoy his success. And he and I were talking about that, and he said, um, like so many different doctors have said, is why should I work so hard for all this success if I can't enjoy it? And then the final thing is what I call they want extra money. So many doctors think it's absolutely crazy that they're the only person in their office that's handling the overhead. Plus, they have to produce all of the profit. Now, I also have another client that's showing up, and that is the very, very busy, successful woman chiropractor who one of the reasons that she wants freedom is in order to have a family. Um, 50% or over 50% of the chiropractic students today are young women, and this is a big concern. So being able to have a family, be successful, and extra income. So this is the promise from this particular webinar. You can get the help that you need just the way you want it. You can get the freedom that you desire and the extra income you deserve in a win-win relationship with great long-term profitable associates. And I want to throw this in. There is no loser in the equation. It's not that you're throwing associates into your sausage grinder and making associate sausage, and that they're leaving bruised and broken while you're taking advantage of them. And it's not the other way either. It's not associates coming in and costing you gobs and gobs and gobs of money. So I want to share with you how I learned what I teach and how I came about this information. I used to have a nice practice. It was closed rooms. I was doing 500 plus patient visits a week myself. And I loved my practice. And every Friday night when I would drive away from the practice, I would look back at my practice and I would just think of my practice as my little sweetheart. But I went to Sun Valley. I was skiing Christmas Bowl. And I had a bad crash. It's called a yard sale. That's when your pole's over here and you've got your mask and your, your goggles and your hat over there. And I got a spinal injury. And now I had cord stenosis, IVF encroachment. I blew out a couple discs. I started to lose the strength in my right arm, and I was told by a neurosurgeon that I would never be able to practice again. And a couple chiropractors that I relied upon said, Noel, you're going to have to change the way you do things. And one of them told me that I shouldn't practice until I totally rehabbed. And what I learned, because my back was against the wall, I had a new wife, a new baby, I had to, what I learned allowed me to build 10 clinics and to sell those clinics to my associates for cash. During that time, I also developed gobs of associates, dozens and dozens of great men, most and women who are still friends to this day. And what I want to do is I want to show you a template. And right in the center there where it says scale, I want you to imagine yourself in the practice of your dreams. In order to be able to be in that position right there, up top it shows what's called the new paradigm. And the new paradigm is what I call the win-win paradigm. Instead of thinking of it as employer and employee, you think of it as coach and player. How you want to win together. But you'll also need to learn how to hire correctly in that 4 o'clock area there where it says hire. There are wrong people to hire, and you want to hire the right people, and you want to hire them the right way, and you want to feel in control in the process, knowing the questions to ask. And then over at the 8 o'clock area there where it says launch, there's something that's super important about that launching process. So if I have a new paradigm and I hire the right person, I can get the help that I want. If I hire the right person and I launch that right person correctly, I will get the freedom. Hiring one associate usually means that you get an additional 2 weeks off a year. Hiring 2 associates in the win-win model, it's my experience from my clients, they're getting 8 weeks off a year. So the freedom from launching and hiring correctly, and then from launching inside the new paradigm, that's where the profit for the clinic owner, and also a great paycheck for the associate. Now, usually one of the things that'll happen is that I'll find the busy, successful chiropractor. He or she is overworked. They're doing everything themselves. Now, that's one of the reasons why chiropractors can sometimes get off into some crazy tangents. They just are looking to make extra income in the office. I also find them with no freedom. I was talking to another prospective client, and we talked to him about how successful he was, and he says, I'm really the captive of golden handcuffs. And he says the handcuffs are golden, but they're handcuffs nonetheless. So this is another problem that I have, and that is I hate to think of all the lost income. You've got this office, you've got an x-ray machine, maybe you have 3 or 4 different adjusting areas, maybe 2 or 3. You could have another associate, even 2 associates in that office without any trouble whatsoever. So this $50 on 120 visits being done by an associate, done on new patients that they produce, equals, that's a $6,000 week, a $25,000 month, and over a $300,000 a year. So just imagine what happens percentage-wise to all your fixed costs when there's an extra $300,000 income. There's a platinum guy, Mark, and you know him. His name is Brian Morris, and Brian started working with me. And I did a video with Brian, and Brian was, that year, he was just doing just under $500,000, which is a good practice. This year, his practice, his individual personal practice has not grown. But his associate practices, and he has multiple associates, has grown by over $1.5 million. He's going to do over $2 million this year. Of course, his fixed costs are, pushed way, way down. His associates make absolutely great money, and Brian does very, very, very well himself. So this is a picture. Here's a young chiropractor, and he is in a vacation with his family, and the associates are taking care of the practice, not begrudgingly. They're thrilled because of the way that they've been trained. And what happens is that he can get away, and he doesn't have to worry about the practice. In fact, frequently in the win-win system, the associates can break records in the clinic director's absence. So, Mark, I'm going to ask you, and I'm going to give you some of my answers on this. Your experience with chiropractors, what's the hardest part about associates? What are some of the things that you hear?
Yeah, what I hear is actually them trying to find somebody that's good, first of all. And if they find somebody that's good, it's keeping them so they don't go off and open their own practice.
Right, right. Both of those things are true. Now, I've got some slides. What you just said, they're hard to find.
Mm-hmm.
So good associates are hard to find. Now, the good news is, if your system is good, and this I got from William Gerber, Bill Gerber, who wrote the E-Myth. If you have a really, really good system, if the genius is in the system, you don't have to have a perfect associate. But you can find somebody. In fact, one of my clients said the other day is that if I can find a 7 and put them in my system, they act like a 9 because the system lifts them up. So one of the things is that they're hard to find. Another thing is they're unmotivated. Now, I know why associates are unmotivated. I've heard, and you and I have heard this. I hired him. He was just great. He was really excited. He showed up. He had this big smile on his face, and it was 3 weeks or 3 months or 3 quarters. And he's just sitting at his desk like a beat dog, and he has absolutely no motivation to do anything. That story is played out so many different times. It doesn't mean that you hired a lazy bum. It's what you hired him to do, the system that you put him in was not motivating. So we need to find a motivation piece, and we're going to talk about that. That'll be the first piece that we cover after we go through this part here. Number 3, they're expensive. Again, I've heard this many times. I'm paying my associate $60,000 and my net income went down by $60,000. Well, it's actually worse than that. because in order for that to be the way, you have to be giving your associate your new patients that you would have normally taken care of. And so when you give your associates new patients like that, what happens is that they never learn how to produce new patients for themselves, so you're constantly feeding them. Number two, they don't appreciate a new patient and what it takes to produce them. In fact, one doctor told me one time that his associate was grousing at him, actually chewing him out in the break room because he was giving him all those crummy new patients. And the clinic director said, Noel, um, I, I could have turned those patients into lifetime chiropractic patients. He just wasn't any good at it. And one of the reasons he wasn't any good at it is he wasn't trained, and he never learned to get out and get his new and make his mistakes with his new, and have the chiropractor coach him. And all of this I trace back to the old, antiquated, broken associateship model. I think the model of employer, employee, here are my goals, come and work for me and my goals, here's your paycheck, that doesn't work. And I've said that to people, and they've said, well, I mean, what other model is there? I mean, that's why I'm hiring associate. I've got goals, and I want to hire. I'm going to show you. Now, if you really want your associateship to work, it has to be built on a foundation. And the foundation is the win-win paradigm. And I'm going to give you several different examples. So let's take a look at these two guys. They look like they're on a rugby team, right? Possibly, maybe soccer, but probably rugby. Now, if the clinic director is on the left and the associate is on the right, that's great. But if it's the other way around, it's great too. And here's what I mean by that, is that if I have an associate who wins big time, then I will win, because I am joined together in a business relationship. And my goal is to see my associate win. And I want to see them win at the most important game that they can, and that is to be the chiropractor that they dreamed of when they went to chiropractic college. And I would like everybody to write this down. You want somebody to help as many people as they want, have as much fun as they want, make as much money as they want while working for you. And you want to provide an environment where they can do that. Now, the old time for money model is broken. And I'm going to show you the new model. And I love this new model. This is win-win. Owner's going to be on the left. Associate's going to be on the right. And I want you to test this in your own mind. I meet chiropractors, they want help, they want freedom, and they want money. So it has to make money. I need freedom, and I need help in the practice. And I've tested this. We're speaking to over 200 students in multiple different occasions. And this is what students tell me they want. They want money. They are in terrible debt. Somebody told me the other day that their associate interviews were too interested in money. I said, if you were $250,000 in debt and you weren't interested in money, you didn't have your head on straight. They want training and winning the big money game, and they want a successful future. Nobody wants to go home after blowing up a career to go to work for their brother-in-law cleaning carpets because they failed as a chiropractor. Nobody wants to tell grandma that the money that they borrowed from her to go open up a chiropractic office, I'm sorry, grandma, I lost your money. So right in the middle, and this is the important part, and when I put these 5 things in here, I want everybody to take a screenshot of this. Number 1, you need to have a big money game. I want to train my associate. In fact, it's my goal for my associate to get up into bonus as quickly as possible and make over $100,000 and do that as quickly as possible. So I'm going to teach them a big money game. I'm going to offer that game. I'm going to train them in how to win that game. So now I'm a coach, right? So here's the game. Now that there's the training. I'm going to give them a deep end of the pool experience. I'm going to give them a deep end of the pool experience. In my clinic system, we go to work right away at winning the big money game. We don't wait a week. I don't see how they're going to do. I take charge right away and head them toward a deep end of the pool experience. Um, they also want mentoring. Now, I speak to guys every now and again who say, "Well, I never was mentored." I know. And I don't know about, I mean, what is this? Is hold hands and group hugs and kumbaya? It's none of that. A mentor does this. A mentor encourages you in your journey while he shares his journey with you. So I'm going to share my journey through the success process and encourage you in yours. And then the final thing, they're looking for a career opportunity. So if you take a look at that, the money training successful on the associate side, the owner gets the help, the freedom, and the money. And right in the middle, that's what win-win looks like. Now, uh, I I want you to think coach rather than think employer. So I was watching a coach being interviewed after his team won the Super Bowl, and he was talking about how great his players were. And I was listening to the players being interviewed, and they were talking about how great the coaching staff was. Now, both those groups, the coach and the player, uh, worked really, really hard and want to see the other one win. If both win, then we get the Super Bowl. So as the clinic owner, I own the stadium, I own the team, I'm the coach, I'm the referee, and I'm the cheerleader. And my associate is the player. So this is the think golf coach. Okay. Now this is Brian and Misty, and I mentioned Brian and Misty a little bit earlier, and these guys are platinum users. When Brian came to me, he had a good practice, but he was stuck, and he was a little frustrated, and he was facing burnout, and uh, and so I talked to him, and I said, you know, you really should think about having an associate. Well, he had terrible experience with associates before. And so we were on the phone in what we call a strategy session, and I had this strategy session with him, and I said, I laid it all out. I laid out all the pieces, and I talked to him about a couple different people that he didn't know, but I told him their story, and he said, you know, if they can do it, I can do it. And this year, Brian, I think, is hiring, they'll have 4 associates in their clinic. They'll do $2 million. He and his wife this year get 8 weeks off. They've had a bunch of great vacation time, and their practice is going to set a record year. Now, because he was willing to change his mind to think of himself as a coach, he also has the advantage of enjoying his practice a whole bunch. Now, one associate developed in the win-win model is worth an extra 20 to 40K a month to the clinic. And then a little bit later, I'll introduce you to a group of associates that are producing between $36,000 and $70,000 a month for the clinic. Why would they stay as an associate if they can collect $60,000, $70,000 a month as an associate on new patients that they generate? And that's because the win-win environment that's been provided. Now, Mark, what do you think so far? Listening through the ears of your platinum clients has been the most useful so far. And I know that this is something I would typically ask live in a webinar, but what do you think might be the most useful?
I'm sorry, repeat that one more time. You kind of broke up there.
Yeah, what's been the most useful so far? All the material that I've covered so far, what do you think's been the most useful?
I tell you what, just kind of learning how to create that win-win deal. I see so many people go into a win-lose situation, where they just get burnt out by the main doctor. They just want them to see their patients, and they just push them on. But like you said, you've got to create that win-win. I think that's super important.
Right, right. So as far as win-win is concerned, I want to have my associate on the phone with his or her parents and excited about what Dr. Lloyd is teaching them, and excited about the fact that they're going to be in bonus in a very few weeks, excited about the future, and you need an exciting future. That means that somebody has set up a win-win opportunity. Now, number two, and this is, I think, super, super important. I've had people that I've worked with who called me up and said, I've heard about your program. I don't know what in the world went wrong. I had a really, really good hire. I listened to them, and they really had good intent. But what happened is they just got off on the wrong foot. They had somebody who could have been very, very successful with them, but they didn't teach them how to do this the right way. So this is what I call onboarding. Onboarding is introducing your employees to your culture. And as far as the culture is concerned, the culture is who we are, it's what we do, why we do it, and how we do it. It's so important. When I onboard somebody, I am their advocate in the process, and I will take them under my wing. Now, it doesn't mean I'm going to coddle them, because I don't, and it doesn't mean that I won't require a lot, because I do, but I want to make sure that they know who we are, what we do, why we do it, and how we do it, because the how we do it part is super, super important. Now, I mentioned this earlier, that if you take a 7, even a 6 or a 7, if they want to learn and they want to be successful, and you put them in a good culture, what happens is that the culture makes them strong. You have to put them in a good system. And I think the win-win culture is super, super important. So Mark, let's talk about some of the elements of clinic culture that we see, and I'll give you an idea in mind. One of the things in my culture is punctuality is super, super important. Both my wife and I are always early for everything, and I expect people to be on time. So that's part of the culture of 5-star management and sound chiropractic centers and New Patient Academy. Can you think of another element, maybe a platinum culture or an element of a chiropractic office culture?
Well, I think professionalism is a huge one as well. Trying to be professional and come across professional.
Right, right, exactly. And so I've had some people say, well, chiropractic philosophy is at the forefront of my culture. Great,
Yeah.
super, super important. Customer service is at the forefront of our culture. Yep, I like that too. So if you onboard people correctly or incorrectly, excuse me, you're always going to be frustrated. There was a guy. He became a great client, and I ended up in a conversation with him because of his frustrations. He said, Noel, my guy does 3 things that drive me nuts, and he doesn't do 3 things that he absolutely should. And I said, Scotty, have you told him? He said, well, Noel, he should know. And I said, well, how's that working for us? He's not a mind reader. And so one of the things that I helped Scott do was organize and template his culture so that he could bring somebody in, take care of the misconceptions and the misinterpretations and the miscues and the missteps, so that it was like everybody's in the sled, and the sled is the practice, and the bobsled run is the culture, and the practice runs inside the culture. There's 4 people on that sled. I don't know if you can see that here. There's 2. We can see 4 people sitting, and everybody's moving, boom, just like that. Now, one of the things that I think is so important is to start immediately. I had a guy tell me one time, well, this is a chiropractor, and he's graduated from a chiropractic college, and I'm not going to tell him what to do. And I said, how crazy is that? How crazy is that? You have spent years at seminars and trial and error developing your system, which has become part of your culture. You need to start immediately. And when I mean immediately, I mean as soon as I get a signature, as soon as I get a signature on a contract. So let's say I'm signing a contract on a Thursday, or maybe it's Wednesday, and they're going to come to work with me on Monday. They get their first success assignments when the ink is still wet on the contract. And I'm going to have already, by the time we're signing a contract, they already know who we are, what we're all about, and they get their job book. And in their job book, it has their checklist, their first assignments, all the things that are going to contribute to them winning the big money game. I frame this binder very, very closely to the way that I frame that win-win associate Venn diagram. In here is the big money game. In here is the training on how to win the big money game. In here talks about the deep end of the pool experience. In here is the foundation for a mentoring. In here is the foundation for a great career opportunity, whether it's with me or somebody else. So it's all got to be in a book. I would like everybody to write this down. You have no right to expect it unless it's written down someplace and you've had a discussion about it. You've got no right to expect it unless it's written down someplace and you've had a discussion about it. Now, I believe in training. Training, 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 training. Now, if I train, and training could be 20 minutes 3 times a week, it could be 1 hour a week, but if I train, my associates are going to produce, remember, an additional $20,000 to $40,000 a month. I'm already there. I'm training something that I know. I've just taken the time and I've taken the effort to organize my material and train according to certain templates. And if I do that, I not only get an additional 2, 4, 6, 8 weeks off a year, but I can get an additional $20,000 to $40,000 a month. I think it's worth training. Now, I also think that there's an attitude in this process. Now, that guy, he gets his hair colored the same place we get our hair colored, Mark, at too many birthdays, right?
Yeah, that's what it takes.
Yeah, right. So, and I like this picture for a couple different reasons. Is that if you have 2 associates, and he's flanked by his associates, and of course this is just a stock photo that I got off the internet, one of those photo services, but it represents to me somebody who really cares about his associates, number one. Number two, he's taken the time to organize the information that he needs to. He's learned how to be an advocate. And I might take that young lady aside and say, I'm your advocate. I want to see you succeed. Your success means just as much to me as my own. I'm going to probably push you out of your comfort zone at different times, but I'm always going to be there to support you. I won't do the work for you, but I'm your advocate. And I think that that's an important attitude. So when they succeed, you get excited for them. You're basically teaching them dance steps. Now, that's a metaphor, of course, but they want to be great dancers. They want to be great chiropractors. You're already a great chiropractor. You teach the dance steps. Now, this is a picture of one of my clients, and very successful young woman when I met her. Her name is Jamie Kramer, and Jamie had a very successful practice when she wanted to have a family, and she had different friends who had kids and who had practices, and the maternity leave was just going to annihilate the practice. You're going to get somebody in to cover, and it wasn't going to work well, and you get a baby out of it, but it's going to probably cost you $200,000-300,000 in lost revenue and working the practice back up. So I told her what I had done for some other people, and she got excited. I basically, in a phone call that we call a strategy session, I started to snap some pieces together, and she said, "No, some coach already told me that associates are too difficult and you can't count on them." I said, "Well, I think I've got a better way." So she got pregnant. We hired her associate. when she took her maternity leave, which was a full 12 weeks, her associate covered. And that year, she did 99% of a best every year. 99% of her best every year. So she was excited. And by the way, her associate, who I now coach as well, was super, super excited to be able to perform like that. So she wanted to have another baby, and she's now better at developing associates. So she has 2 associates. And this is the fun part. Her practice, 3 successive months when she's home with her new baby, little Lily, they broke over 80,000 collected, which was a record for those 3 months. And the associates running the practice 17 weeks out of that year pushed the practice up over $1 million. So now they were thrilled as well. They made great money. Jamie made great money. Jamie got 2 babies because the associates were brought on and onboarded correctly and did a great job. In fact, this is a great statistic. Her husband is a banking services type of guy. He's very, very, very smart and takes a look at statistics, and they ran the numbers. She was able to take 1 full year off in 4 years. 1 full year in 4 years, while the associates produced an additional $1.277 million in collected money. So motivated associates doing the right thing because they were onboarded correctly and they were playing inside a win-win model. Now this is number 3, and this is super, super important stuff right here. You've got to launch your associate correctly. Your associate's going to be your clinical assistant. They're going to handle overflow in the practice, but they have to be launched. I've been a coach now for almost 35 years. The number one reason by 10 to 1 people have gotten in touch with me is because they didn't know how to produce new patients. There are more good chiropractors not practicing chiropractic right now because they don't know how to produce new patients. And the number one reason that associateships fail is because the business of the associate fails. And what will happen is your bookkeeper, and frequently it's, I was talking to a doctor not long ago, his wife had come to him and said, we need to fire the associate. Why is that? Well, our net income went down by $60,000, exactly what we were paying the associate. And his wife told him that he wasn't working that hard, that he needed an associate. And he said, it was just heartbreaking. The business part didn't work. So you have to have the launch work. If the launch works, then that becomes the third link in the chain. It's so important. Now, Mark, you and I, having had our hair colored at too many birthdays, how old does that young woman look to you? She looks 14 to me.
Yes, maybe 16.
Maybe 16, right? Well, this is Lizzie Archer, and Lizzie was in her mid-20s here, and she was full list. Now, this is in London, and she worked for Andy Green in West London. Now, full list means that there's no room left in her schedule. And it took her 20 months to get that. Now, she had learned a very, very simple launch strategy that we taught Andy to teach her. And one of the things that she would do is spinal screenings. And if you were to be at the table with her, she's quite shy, but she's really, really smart, and she's driven, and she knows her scripts perfectly. And we did a training video with her because she was so successful at this. And so here's the deal. This is a list of internal and external marketing things. Screenings, the ones in yellow are external, screening, health fairs, Facebook, Google, and the ones that are circled in black are internal programs, patient testimonies, new patient orientation class, invitation to good health. Whatever it is, you have to pick what I call a 6-pack and package up that information and help your associate understand why and how they need to produce their own new patients. If they don't, they're always going to be hampered. In fact, I think it's abuse to not teach an associate how to produce new patients. Now, this is Dr. Aaron Bloom and Olivia. And what you can't see in this picture is that Aaron is pregnant with Forrest Jr. And Aaron came to me, and another young woman who wanted to have children, and said to me, I'm going to bite the bullet. I know for a fact that it's just going to be terribly expensive. She had a beautiful clinic, spent a lot of money on her education, had student loans, had a bank loan for the clinic and the rebuild and the equipment and all this. But she said, I want to have babies. And I said, I totally get it. And I started talking to her about how associates can produce their own new patients. And she was motivated. She says, I want to believe what you're telling me. And I said, okay, great. So let's just jump in. So her first baby was Olivia. And she had a maternity leave. I think it was about 12, 13 weeks. And she came back to her practice and integrated back into the practice. And that year, her practice did a best ever year by over $100,000, which was just a little bit under $900,000 total money. And as far as having a second baby is concerned, what she learned about working with associates with her first baby, she was able to take a 5.5-month maternity leave with Forrest Jr. So she's got 2 little ones, and she's spending almost a half a year without being a practicing chiropractor. Well, she ran the practice and did a best every year in practice again. And all of this started with a phone call where she said, this is what I want, here's where I'm at. And I snapped the pieces together for her and explained it to her. And she said, let's do it. Now, this young man, this is Steve with his wife, Whitney. And when I met Steve was about 100 patient visits a week. I include him in this slideshow because he added 500 patient visits a week through his associates. I know that right now he's on a vacation. I know that right now his associates are handling the practice, and they won't miss him hardly at all. Now, the question I've heard some people say is, how do my associates feel about this? In the upper left-hand corner, this is Alan Liebing. Alan works for Milo Thurber. In the lower left-hand corner, that's Rachel Young. She works for Brian and Misty. And the 2 associates, Colton and Miranda, on the right-hand side, they both work for Steve Jones. Take a look at this. Best ever collected month on new patients that Alan Liebing has either produced through internal referrals or external marketing or sharing in clinic marketing is $70,000 in a month. Now, if you run the math on that over 12 months, that's a ton of money. And I asked Alan, I said, do you plan to go out in your own practice someday? And he said, I absolutely love it here, and I want to work with Milo as long as they'll have me. Colton is producing about $40,000 a month working with Steve. Rachel, $36,000 a month. By the way, she's on her second maternity leave right now. Right now, she's on her second maternity leave. So listen to this. This is kind of a little aside, but I think it's important. A higher number of chiropractic students are women than ever before. It's going to be over 50%. And the trends in healthcare are more and more and more women are going to be chiropractors. It's going to be the majority in the profession. If you can offer an opportunity for somebody to come and do a great practice and then also take a maternity leave and come back, why would she want to have a lease and a building and all the equipment when she can produce beautifully, not only chiropractically, but also family? And Miranda's best ever month collected is about $64,000. And she's just a super profitable associate. And you can take a look at this. Colton's $40,000 and Miranda's $60,000. That's over $1 million in collected money from associates who are also really, really happy. Now, Mark, I don't know why the people are showing up and why they would have stayed all the way to this point in the presentation if they hadn't been interested in it. Um, they probably would have clicked out by now. But I think people would like to have an associate. People would like to get help. People would like to get freedom. People would like to get extra money. The only question is how. And the answers are you can do it the slow way, and the slow way is the no way. I've talked to so many different people who have heard me speak years ago and said, I heard you talk about the associate thing and I wanted to do it and I felt that I had enough information. But, 40 hours of chiropractic hit me square in the kisser when I got back to the office, and all my great notes just, they never got put into play. Or there's the trial and error method, which is the slowest, most expensive way, and it almost always leads to discouragement. Or there's the fast way. And the fast way is implementing a system. And a system is a finely tuned connection of tasks and strategies and concepts and procedures. And the system will work even when you're out of the system. I was talking to a doctor about a systems practice versus a personality practice, and he said, well, I'm a personality practice. I said, what happens when you take your personality to the beach for a week? He said, well, my practice crashes because you took away the thing the practice runs on. Also, how tired are you if you're constantly having to entertain? I think having a great personality is a really, really good deal. It's an asset for everybody. But take a good personality and put it inside systems. Then other people can learn your systems and do what you do for you. That's what I call the win-win associate system. Now, it's not for everybody. And I want to tell you what I mean by this. I talked to a guy, this is several years, it's a decade ago, and he says, I want to get a couple of associates in here, and I want to get the hell out of this place and have them run this for me. And I said, whoa, stop. I said, the only thing you're going to teach these guys is how to hate chiropractic like you do. I said, I can't work with you. I don't like your goals. So this is not a program for somebody who wants to take advantage of or use people. This is a program for somebody who wants to develop people. Now, this is a grid, and I want to take you through this grid from the bottom up. Under 100 patient visits a week, you aren't ready for an associate. The $200,000 a year collected practice, 100 visits. Over on the far right-hand side, it shows 0. You're getting no extra time off. You're not ready. 160 patient visits a week and $300,000 a year. You're still not getting any free time, but this is the practice that we start to work with in order to prepare that practice to have an associate. Now, the $500,000 practice, 160 visits a week, $40K a month collected, 50% profit. That's the practice that we see is worthy of replication. That's the practice that we need to work on to make sure that they understand the win-win paradigm, that they understand the associate operating system in the clinic, and they've got their resources squared away, and they add the associate. That becomes the $750,000 a year practice, with the associate producing an extra $20K a month, and the clinic owner getting an extra 2 weeks off. So if the clinic director took 1 or 2 weeks off before he or she got their associate, add the associate, you can get a full month off or an extra 2 weeks. Now, this $1 million practice with 2 associates is one of my favorites. So, and let me tell you why. There's a young man that I work with who is developing associates in the win-win model, and he says, this is great. He said, my associate was profitable in 45 days, produced more money from new patients that they generated as a result of the templates that we teach. And he said, he's getting really busy now. Could I have another one of these? I said, do you have room? Yeah. Do you enjoy the process? He says, oh, yeah, I love it. I said, well, let's bring in another associate. So listen to this. When the clinic director takes his vacation, the two associates cover. When the senior associate takes his vacation, the junior associate covers. When the junior associate takes his vacation, the senior associate covers. It becomes this co-op, this consortium, and these guys are all working together, and it's a thing of beauty. Now, I've got clinics with two associates that do $2 million bucks. But this is a pretty good range here. And so here's what I would say to anybody who's watching this video. Pick a line that you like. Maybe you're at 160, maybe you're at 260. I think that you want to, at some point in time, draw a target on 1 million or 1.5 million or even 2 million. Now, at the very, very top level, we've got the possibility of a second office. If you really fall in love with this process and you love developing associates and you like the business part, you have an option. And that option is that you could become the managing partner of in your chiropractic office. And the associates see all the patients and you do the management work. Now, that's what happened to me. I was forced into that role as a result of my injury. Now, this is one of the things I think is so important to remember. One associate developed inside the win-win model is worth an extra $20,000 to $40,000 to the clinic. I tell this story here, and I think that Cash is a platinum person who works with you out of Austin, Texas. So he hired his associate, and his associate is Dr. Nate. Well, just as soon as he hired him, and I mean literally the same week, Texas was shut down because of COVID. So he's got this associate, his practice is struggling. I gave him some tips, and what happened was when he started to work with me, the second month that Dr. Nate worked with Cash, he produced more money than his first 2 months' paychecks, actual collected money. And this is I got this text message from Cash, or this might have been an email. Hey Noel, I'm keep having conflicts during the associate Q&A. So he couldn't show up for a particular training that we were doing. Wanted to give you an update. Dr. Nate is pre-appointed to see 43 office visits this week and already has collected $9,000 this month with an office collection to date of over $41,000, on track to have his biggest collections ever, because he developed him inside the win-win model. Now, you probably know that Cash had an accident. Mark, you probably know that Cash had an accident this year and was out for 5 weeks. He also had some elective surgery. So he was out of the practice for 5 weeks. They're going to do a best every year because he has an associate built in the win-win model. Now, all of these things start with what we call a strategy session. So what I want to offer anybody who's interested is an opportunity to speak to me. I call it a free associate readiness session. I would typically send this in the chat, but I've got a link for you to check. It's myfivestar.com/free strategy session. You would go to that link and click that box, and you would end up here. You'd give me your first name, your last name, your email, your phone number, and somebody from my office would get in touch with you and put you in a conversation with me. Now, in 1 month's time, I'm starting a special training that we do called CDEP. That's the Clinic Director Empowerment Project. Every person that I talked about today has been through CDEP. Every single person I've talked about today says that this is the best training on associate development that they've ever seen. And so if you have any interest at all in doing an associate readiness session, go to my5star.com/free strategy session, click the box, drop in your information, and then what will happen is that you and I would get on the phone and we'd have a conversation about whether it's time for you to get an associate and how to do it the right way. Now, typically, Mark, I would ask people if they had any questions. Can you think of some things that we might want to talk about relative to associates and the win-win associate system?
Well, I tell you, what you've gone over so far is just incredible about going through the process and learning it. How long does that process usually take between the start of an associate? And I know you've given some kind of numbers in there, but on average, before they're up and ready and running through the program.
So what we do is we recruit our associate to sprint to bonus. They're motivated, they're in a new job, they want to make money. And so what we do is we start training in all these different processes. So an associate is typically in profit in 60 to 90 days. In other words, making more money than they're costing in 60 to 90 days. And so let's say that you're paying an associate $5,000 or $6,000 as a base. That means from new patients that they produce, that you bring them in the clinic and that you collect the cash, usually in prepays, on care programs equal to or more than their paycheck. Now, I've got some doctors that have developed 4, 5, 6 different associates, and their associates are always in profit before the end of the first month. Now, it can take, I had one guy just recently who he says, I need an associate and I want to get one right away. I said, okay. So we worked at getting his ads up, and in 3 weeks he had an associate hire. Who was a really, really good person. And he had gone through our special training on how to do the interview process and how to manage not only ads, but what we call an extra connection strategy, because there are ways that people can find associates that are in addition to the ad part. And so, and here's another thing. Usually the associate thinks that this is going to be a temporary thing. And I've seen the associates change because they love the win-win environment. Somebody's caring about them, somebody's helping them advance in the process. So anyway, I hope that that's a good answer to your question.
Oh yeah, definitely. So I see a lot of I talked to in the very beginning that associates, if you go to one, they want to leave, but if you're paying them well and they're making a great living and they're in a win-win situation, why would they want to leave?
And what you have to do to bring to the package. If you just, for instance, if you bring a brand new baby home and you put the baby in the crib and say the diapers are over here and the formula's in the fridge and I'll see you at the end of the week, you got a dead baby.
Yeah, definitely.
And this is a baby chiropractor. So one of the things that we do in Win-Win Associates at 5-Star Management is we teach you how to develop a successful chiropractor. Now, you own the stadium, you own the team, you are the coach, you're the referee and the cheerleader. They're the player. They've got a lot of work to do. But we plan out and map out this work, specifically the first 8 weeks, so that you can have an exciting launch. And so people think, hey, I'm in the right place.
Definitely. One of the things that Platinum really helps with as well is, like the Morrises and Cash and those guys you've talked about. is that it really helps track that associate, what they bring in. And it's very simple to do. I've had other people call me with other systems and say, I just can't track what that associate brings in. It's too tough. But we have a button right on the note-taking system that says this patient was seen by this doctor today, and it bills that person the right doctor, so the right information goes on the HICVA forms. But also at the end of the month, it's very easy to track their collections, what they brought in, how many new patients they had, how many visits they had. And that's a huge thing as far as tracking through systems. And I think that's why people like Platinum so well in your system.
I really do, and I've talked to a number of people, and they never have the questions about how do we do this and how do we make it work and how do I get the information. So I mean, there's so many different features. I'm a real fan of Platinum,
Thank you.
but I'm a fan of Platinum because my clients are fans of Platinum. So
Exactly. Doesn't work. It's not. Nobody's going to be a fan.
what's that?
I said, if it doesn't work, nobody's going to be a fan.
If it doesn't work, nobody's going to be a fan.
Mm.
So I want to mention this one more time, is that I did one of these phone calls this morning. So somebody been in practice for a while. They're super busy. They are on a fixed income. You know, if you're at maximum capacity, you're on a fixed income. You're not going to make any more money unless you raise your prices or add some fad, right? And he knew that the best way to grow his practice was with another set of hands. And so he and I had a conversation, and we went through the business, and I asked him a whole bunch of different questions. And so my5star.com/free strategy session. I think we did it, Mark.
I think so. Thank you so much for coming on here and sharing your knowledge. Like I said, if so many groups these days or coaches and stuff teach how to grow your practice, but nobody knows how to get the most out of your practice once it's already there. Because I've seen people seeing 600-700 patient visits a week kind of by themselves, and golly, you're talking about wearing somebody down and wearing out your shoulders and everything else. You need to learn how to get that proper associate in there. So thank you so much for helping doctors become not only successful but enjoy life. And that, I think,
right.
is huge.
Super. Thank you so much.